everyone. I am Tiffany Eddy, and I am so pleased to be joined by my partner in crime, Tom Praisall of Demers, Praisall, and Thomas. And we're here to share with you another episode of Anything
But Politics,
where we talk about
anything but politics. And, you know, it's great because we're lucky today because not only are we joined by an in his eighth term, state representative, but also someone I get to consider a friend, and not just because, you know, he bails me out of precarious situations on the golf course every Thursday. But, you know, Representative Tim Soucy is currently serving his eighth term. He is in leadership as the deputy ranking Democrat on the House Labor Committee.
Correct.
He's served on numerous committees, but he's also a 29-year veteran of the fire service in Nashua. And in addition to that, he's a great golfer and a house husband and big fan of Andrea Bocelli, from what I understand.
Yes, sir.
And I've also had the privilege of being in the presence of Representative Soucy on the golf course, and
quite a spectacle.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It's
Not
like,
really.
It's like you're a machine. Like, did they ever reach out to you to be like, hey, you know, have you thought about the tour?
No, not really. No, I will say this, though. When I took up the game of golf, I was probably 21 years of age.
Really?
Playing golf, yeah. Got together with a bunch of guys from Nashua Fire. Went out, played golf, loved the game so much. Started really taking a lot of time going to the driving range. And Tom mentioned earlier about when they used to use video VCRs or recorders or whatever.
Yeah.
And we would have these things set up on a tripod at the driving range, and I would go home and I would watch tapes of Jack Nicklaus and Greg Norman, all these real, you know, in my day, big golfers. And so you get these tapes, you watch them, you go to the driving range, you try to, you know, see if you can be as consistent as they were. But it never really happened. You know, you practice and.
I think it's kind of happened. I mean, what's your handicap index?
4.6.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And you hit a long drive. Like, it's you're a monster.
But as I'm getting older, it's starting to slow down a little bit. So we'll see how we do this year. Maybe Tom. I was going to send Tom a couple things on Instagram.
I'll take all the help I can get.
You know, if he could outdrive me this year. So we'll see how that goes.
Tom's also a good golfer.
Tom is a good golfer.
No, we have a good time. But, you know, and we're going to get back to golf because there's some things I want to talk about with that. But I always like to start these episodes from the beginning. So you were born and raised in Nashua, right?
That's correct.
And did you always want to be a firefighter growing up?
That's interesting because I would
That's why
say
I brought it up.
I'm going to say no because, you know, as a kid, I grew up in a family that my grandfather was a business owner. He was a landlord. He was a store owner. All my uncles owned stores. So there were a lot of Soucys in Nashua that owned a lot of businesses. So I would go to work with, you know, my father. I'd be at the store with my grandfather. An interesting story is when I moved out of the Pine Street area and moved over after my parents got divorced, I moved over to Crown Hill. And there happened to be a store directly across the street from my house. So I said, well, you know what? I've been in stores before. Let's see if I can go over there and get a job. So that's why as a kid, 11, 12 years old, I was, you know what? The guy that owned the store was paying me $20 a week to sweep the outside, take out the trash. And so going through school, I never thought about the fire department. I mean, my stepdad was a big influence of that. He was on the job there. My uncle was on the job. He was a deputy chief. My stepdad was a lieutenant. So as I was working at the store, I actually, when I was able to get my driver's license, we used to deliver groceries. And I remember this very well because 10th and 11th grade, what I wanted to do was fly planes. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to go into service, and I wanted to fly planes. Mm-hmm. And so through the years of delivering groceries, there was a couple in the south end of Nashua that we would deliver to every Saturday. And I would go in and I'd have conversation with this gentleman and his wife. And he would ask me kind of, you know, what are you looking to do when you get out of high school? And I said, I would really like to fly planes. That's what I want to do. Well, lo and behold, long story short, I find out that this gentleman had retired from the Air Force, spent a lifetime in the Air Force, retired, and it really took a liking to me because I was going there every week, to the point where he went to my mother, went to my boss first, but then talked to my mother afterwards to see if he could get into the school to get my records. Kind of building this up to see if I was really the type of person that was going to do this. So 10th and 11th grade, that's what I wanted to do. And I would talk to this guy all the time, and we were putting a plan together. And then my senior year came around, and I took a liking to the fire department. My father was there, so I was always following if there was a fire in the city. I had my license, so we'd bicycle to wherever it was. We'd have scanners at home so we could hear this stuff.
Wait a second. You would bicycle, so you would bicycle to a fire scene because that was something that you were so interested in serving?
Absolutely. So all my buddies and I, we would just get on our bikes. We'd figure out where it is. And, a lot of times growing up as a kid in that area, French Hill and Nashua was an area where it was a lot of fires up there.
Oh, wow.
So that's what we'd do. We'd either bicycle or somebody had a car and we'd drive there. And so we would chase the fire trucks around. So my senior year in high school, I
used to chase the fire trucks around too, but it was for news.
Yes, that's right.
We would have to hear the scanner too, but anyway,
Well,
sorry.
we probably saw it, and we probably met up sometime way back in the day.
I bet, yeah.
So, but yeah, my senior year in high school, I was just kind of like really took an interest to it, and it broke my heart because I'm sure that I broke this gentleman's heart when I told him that, yeah, I'm not pursuing the pilot thing or, military. When I get out of high school, I'm going to pursue the fire department. And, in the long run, it panned out well because I graduated in 1986 and I was hired in 1987 on the fire department in Nashua. So, yeah, it worked out well and I had a great career.
What's the best part? Like, some of my favorite people that I had an opportunity to meet in my years of being a broadcast journalist were the firefighters, and loved going in and hearing all the different stories. And you guys see a lot of stuff, but any favorite stories or memories pop out from fire service?
I've seen, in my 29 years, I've seen a lot. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Best thing about the fire service is the people you work with. Going in every day, listening to the stories at the table, what they did on their 4 days off, but we had, it was the camaraderie with the guys and the girls that we worked with. And, most of the time everybody gets along. So you sit at the kitchen table in the morning, you have a conversation, you go out, you do your job, you come back and we talk about it, right? A lot of things that we've seen. But I think the biggest thing or the best thing was being able to help the people that I actually grew up with, in the city that I grew up in.
Yeah.
I mean, to work for the fire department in the city that I actually grew up in. I was a kid there, and again, chasing the fire trucks around, as a youngster, and then actually being able to ride on those fire trucks. I mean, I can't explain to you what the feeling was the very first time that I was able to get on a fire truck and scream down the streets with the sirens on. It is that little kid feeling where you're, really excited about it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up the camaraderie, right? And I think the reason why I find it interesting is because, you and I have spoken a number of times, and you actually had an opportunity. You retired as a lieutenant, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And but you had an opportunity to go further, but that would have meant leaving the house you were at. Yeah. Not your home, but the firehouse.
Yeah.
And you chose, I like the guys I'm working with. They're like a family to me, and I don't want to leave them, right?
Yeah, I had a bunch of guys that we were together for. It was quite a few years, and it was actually talked about in the firehouse. It was actually pretty funny because whenever they would come out with a transfer, we would always look on the board and see, who was getting transferred. And so you look down the list and you see that the guys that you're actually working with and the girls you were actually working with, you'd see that none of them are on the transfer list. No one's leaving the firehouse on my day. And so then it would be like, oh, why does this group get to stay together so long? They've been together forever. And, so that was great because the guys and girls that I worked with were phenomenal. I still keep in contact with a lot of them today. So, yeah, it was, the camaraderie was great. So,
any close calls when you were a firefighter? I mean, 29 years, so you've obviously seen a lot of different things, but I would imagine that, it's a dangerous occupation, and anything that ever kind of you think, wow, I got really lucky there.
So it's funny you asked that because I actually texted a buddy of mine last night because he's the one that reminds me of this all the time. Every year he'll give me the date it happened. So I asked him last night. So back in August 23rd, 2005, typical day at the firehouse. Around 11 o'clock, call comes in for a building fire up in French Hill. We weren't directly affected on the first alarm assignment, but they get on the scene. They had heavy fire, heavy smoke showing. So the deputy calls for a second alarm. So we get in the truck because we're out of Lake Street, so we knew we were going to go. We were going to be the third engine in. So we get to the fire. We're looking around, looking at the outside of the building. Deputy gave me some orders to do some stuff. And one of the things that we saw was an air conditioner on the third floor of this building. So there was a ladder already placed there. So our job, because the fire was up in the attic, so you could see the smoke coming out of all the windows up in the attic on the third floor, was pushing out of the roof. So it was our job to go up, make sure that somebody pushes that air conditioner into the building so that it doesn't come out and come down on somebody.
Okay.
So one of my guys was tied up doing something else just around the corner on the side of the house. So I decided that I'm going to be the guy that's going to go up. I took about, I probably went up 5-6 feet. Turned around, looked up real quick, and said, yeah, we have to move this ladder. So as I was coming down the ladder, it's almost like I was in a movie because I heard someone yelling, and I had taken my hand and I put it on my helmet, kind of like this, to look down to see if there was anybody below me. And as I came back up like this, I put my hand down, and next thing I know, something hit me.
Oh, wow.
And it was about, I don't know how long I was out for, but when I woke up to somebody screaming in my face to keep my eyes open. I had no idea what had just happened. So the reason I came to is, I think I was actually choking on, and I hate to say this, but on my own blood, because I had bitten through my tongue. I had broken some teeth. I had blood coming down because I had cut my forehead. And somebody was holding traction on me. And I'm trying to speak, and I can't get any words out. And so they rolled me over on my side. And I can hear them talking, but I still couldn't speak. And they were saying, you had an air conditioner come down and smash you on the head.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're going to try to, so everybody did a great job. I got loaded into the ambulance. And luckily for me, you get to the hospital, they do all kinds of tests on you. And the funniest thing of the day, and the story's not funny, but it made light of the whole thing, was, they did all these tests. I was probably in there for 6, 7, maybe 8 hours. And they still had traction on me. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see the fire department chaplain coming by the emergency room, and he's walking by the window. And I'm thinking to myself,
is that a good sign or a bad sign?
That's what I'm thinking, right? I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So when he got to the door, I just raised my hand and I said, not today, Father. Save it for another day, because it's not happening. And he just looked at me and started laughing. He goes, I'm not here to give you your rights, your last rights. I'm here to just come in and, see how you're doing. And so, yeah, I get released from the hospital that night. It could have been a lot worse. I think the doctors told me that, luckily I was still standing on the ladder, because if I had been on the ground, they'd think that the impact from the air conditioner probably would have, really done some serious damage to my back. And so luckily I was on the ladder. I took the hit, and I think I was back to work 17 days later.
17 days. You are a savage.
Well, I tried to,
Savage.
I didn't like being out of work. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But it was, I had a lot of, friends call me all the time, see how I was doing, everything like that. And so, yeah, but that's about probably the closest thing to, really being injured that I've had when I was on for 29 years. So I guess I was pretty lucky.
Yeah, that is lucky. And we're glad, too, because now you can be on Anything But Politics and share the story with us. Question. So somebody from Manch Fire told me this years ago, but that they would call police officers who arrive at the scene first Blue Canaries. Does that ring a bell at all? Is that a Manch Fire thing?
I want to say that's probably a Manchester thing.
Okay.
I don't remember that happening in Nashua too often.
Okay.
But I think the relationship between the Manchester fire guys, or firefighters, and police was probably a little better than what we used to have in Nashua. I think it's all good now. But I remember going up to Manchester one time, unfortunately for a funeral. And I remember Manchester PD and Manchester Fire were just, just really close.
Yeah.
Really, really close. And I think that's the way it is in Nashua now. There's a lot of guys, in Nashua and that get along. It used to be, and understand this, it was always, when you're firefighters, your police, your union people, right? And so you're negotiating contracts. And so it was always a parity thing. So in our city, we used to have that argument. And I think, on both sides, I think people took exception to the fact that somebody's trying to get parity for, different jobs. But definitely in Manchester, they were, I don't recall that. I mean, probably back before my time.
Well, I think it was more like a compliment, or like they would get to a fire scene first, and then they would try to go in and be helpful, but perhaps they didn't have the right skills to be helpful in a fire situation. So that's where the term came from. But I was just curious if that was like a firefighter police kind of relationship, or if it was just a Manchester police.
Well, I'll say this: when I first got promoted to lieutenant, I was out at a firehouse on Connaught Road in Nashua, and I remember it was probably maybe 4 months into being a lieutenant, and we get a call one night for a building fire, and we show up on the scene, and sure enough, I mean, we have fire blowing out every window on the first floor. And funny story is actually a kid that I went to high school with. Years after I was on the fire department, he finally came to me and said, "Hey, I'd really like to get on the fire department. Is there anything you can do?" And so he ends up getting on the fire department. Well, he was a probationary firefighter, and they actually stationed him with me. So that was his first fire. It was my first fire as a lieutenant. Well, the police got there right around the same time we did. And I remember them standing out front. They were standing in front of the door, and my guys were bringing down a line to go in the front door. And the police officers just looked at us and said, "You guys are crazy. There's no way we're going in there."
Yeah.
And, I mean, we had black smoke blowing out of there. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said when we went in and we hit the fire, I mean, we went in and smoke came out the door, and he said they totally lost track of us. And then when we went in there and hit the fire, flames came shooting out, and they said they actually backed up, and they're like, "All right, we're going to go stand in the street and let these guys do what they need to do." But
Yeah, well, there's a reason you guys are trained differently, right?
trained differently. I mean, they don't have the gear. I mean, listen, there were times, I've known times where, they've tried to get into buildings, and they've done a decent job of helping to get people out before, we arrive. But yeah, they don't have the gear we have. And so I commend them for trying to get in and do the things that, anything that they can help to get people out of the buildings.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to touch on is when we're talking about the camaraderie in the firehouse and everyone's together. I know one of your passions outside of work as a legislator and being a house husband, or maybe part of your duties as a house husband, is cooking. I know you love to cook, and I believe that probably started in the firehouse. And so I'm curious about how that works, right? Because we all know you sit down, family dinners, everyone eats. Is it just, were you in charge of cooking all the time? How does that whole process work? Give us a glimpse.
And I want to go back to the house husband thing, because that sounds awesome. Like, what are the duties and responsibilities to get that title?
Well, I'll tell you that in 1 minute.
It's all connected.
Cooking in the firehouse, when I first got on the job, and I'll say this because I love my mother to death, but my mother was a bland cook.
Oh.
Bland cook, right? A lot better now. So I didn't really learn cooking skills at home as much as I did in the firehouse, but through the course of time, the stations that I was working at, you'd have 7 or 8 people working there. So it was always tough to have, the same person cooking. Mm-hmm. So guys would want to take, folks would want to take the opportunity to show off their skills and, try to cook there. And I will tell you that some of the folks that I worked with were phenomenal cooks. I mean, they could have worked in, really high-end restaurants and done a great job. I mean,
and when you're cooking, too, at the fire department, it's not just cooking for, 4 people, or a couple people. I mean, you're cooking for, everybody who's on the team that night, right? So that's 15, maybe 20 people, something?
So our firehouse, most of the 3 firehouses in Nashua that have 8 folks working at a time,
Okay.
plus the deputy chief, plus his aide. A lot of times the chiefs would come over, so the firehouse I was in. So we could be cooking for up to 15 people. And it wasn't always easy. What we did was everybody would pitch in. You know, we'd have a weekly, what they call the kitty, and we'd take money out. And so if it was your turn to cook, we kind of based it on like $5 per meal per person. So you'd have $80 for the day, and so you go do your grocery shopping, and if there was, at the end of the day, if there was any money left over, we would just collect the money. So like on Christmas Day, because we always work Christmas Day, we would have a big meal, right? But folks would take turns cooking. I got to the point with one of the crews I was working with that they enjoyed my cooking. So I made it easy. I said, we don't have to, divvy this up. I'll do all the cooking. And so you experiment with things, and it worked out great. And then when I get transferred, last couple of years I was on the job, I got transferred to another crew that some of these guys really enjoyed cooking, so I wasn't going to go in and try to change things. And so we broke it up in a way that if we were working on Tuesday, somebody knew they were cooking on Tuesday. And every day you advance a week, right, with our schedule. So you always knew, every week we knew who was cooking. I missed it, so then I just took it up at home. I did all the cooking at home, and I do that today.
So question, what is the meal that you are best known for? Like,
Took the words right out of my
I'm
mouth.
So sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, that's good.
It was the natural follow-up. But we had Senator Prentice on a couple weeks ago, and she's known for scratch brownies, which, she keeps saying that she's going to bring them into us.
She sent me a picture of a batch she was making this weekend.
Such a tease. But so, and if you do make it, would you bring Tom and I some food?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that.
Just to warn you, Tiffany, I've been waiting on a cheesecake for like 3 years now.
Well, I love to make cheesecake. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to make. Meals, I'm a pasta guy, so I love pasta. And I love, some people don't like this, but I love veal. So when I'm making pasta, I put veal. I put onions, peppers, sausage. Everything you can imagine is going into the sauce. Or like, at home on Wednesday night this week, I have veal at home. We're having veal marsala, mashed potatoes. I don't think I'm going to make a cheesecake because my wife and I probably will not eat the cheesecake, just the two of us. But cheesecake was a favorite of mine.
But for the big group,
pasta was the big thing.
like chicken parm, we talking? Are
Chicken
we talking
parm,
piccata?
we would do most of the time during the days light lunches. So we'd do salads. A lot of people like chicken Caesar salad. So we'd do chicken Caesar salad, chicken Caesar wraps, whatever. Nighttime, we get a little more and get a little heavier. We'd do the pasta dishes, or we'd do meatloaf. So anything you can imagine. It's we'd just cook anything, and it's for 8 people. I mean, I'll tell you, Christmas was the greatest. The guy I was talking about earlier that just bought a house in Ireland, he actually was working at a boatyard. And so Christmas was coming up, and we said, what are we going to do for a meal this year? And usually Christmas Day is a prime rib. So we're like, all right, I got an idea. Let's do a prime rib, and let's get some lobsters, because everybody loves lobsters. So my buddy Gordy Wilson says, yeah, you know what? I can get the lobsters. So he went to the boatyard, talked to one of the fishermen out there, and the gentleman said, yep, I'll get you lobsters. The thing is, here's the catch. He goes, whatever I bring in in the cage, you have to buy. So we're like, yeah, whatever. We'll take it. Well, I think he had probably one of the best catches in a week. And so we had to buy 50 lobsters from him.
Oh, wow.
So we had 50 lobsters for 8 people at the firehouse. So we all invited our families down. So some of them came in for Christmas Day to eat. But then we shucked all the lobsters, froze the meat afterwards. And so we ate lobster and lobster salad for, I don't know, the next 2 days. So Christmas was where we splurged a little more. Prime ribs.
And it pays based on what you were saying earlier about, you're allotted, $5 a person, per day. So you get $80. If you don't spend it all, it goes into the side kitty, so you can buy 50 lobsters for Christmas.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would have.
So it pays to be cheap.
I think we were, at one point, we probably had about $500 in the kitty. And that would, absolutely pay for the lobsters, pay for the prime rib, and whatever else we wanted. So, yeah, that was the way it worked.
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of kitties, you're an animal lover, aren't you?
I wouldn't really say I'm an animal lover. I have cats.
Kitties. It was like, did you see the pivot there? What I did?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I have
all
a
right.
see- I
dog
see what you
as
did there.
well. Had a rabbit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, indoor rabbit.
Indoor? No, no more though.
No, Jack's not around anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, Jack was, I want to say, really surprised me because I think he lived to be like 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that's, I don't know if that's unusual for a rabbit, but yeah, my daughter decided that when she was going off to college, that my wife and I were going to miss her so much that she decided that, this is my stepdaughter, that she needed to get another cat, even though we already had 2 and a dog. So she decided that she was going to bring in this other little kitten. And
That was
been a-
nice of her.
yeah, it's been nice and it's been a terror. I don't think waking us up at 6 o'clock in the morning is doing the cat any favors. So
That's great. So I think one area I wanted to touch on was going back to golf real quick. All right, because I love golf, and I know you love golf, and I know Tiffany loves golf.
I love golf.
So you're a champion,
Ooh.
correct?
that's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a champion and maybe who that was with, or a little bit of a story behind that?
I will do that. So Tom and I get together on Thursday nights to play. And
But this Tom?
this Tom.
Oh, wow.
Tom
The reason I
Fraser.
brought it up.
Yeah. So we play in a Thursday night league at Concord Country Club. And we don't always do well, but we enjoy each other's company. And
we have a good time.
We have a good time. So a few years back, they have a member at Concord Country Club. And I used to play with I play in the spring with this guy, Dave Richardson. And I was playing in the fall with Bruce Berkey.
Oh, yeah.
And Bruce couldn't make it one year, so Tom and I decided that we're going to give it a go. And so we played the first year, didn't pan out well for us. This year comes along, last year came along, and Tom and I teamed up again. And so we put a plan together. We said, here we go. Let's hope that we can play 6 under each day, and it'll get us in the running. Probably not going to win the tournament, but it'll put us in the running.
It's a lofty goal.
It is a lofty goal. So the first day, we went out, and we actually both played pretty decent.
I think we ended 5 under.
We ended up 5 under, so we
close to our goal.
Yeah, and so one off where we wanted to be, but actually put us, more than midway through the field. I think we were probably somewhere in the top 10.
Yep.
And so in the morning, or in the afternoon, I'll say this, Tom says, I actually had a couple beers in the afternoon and towards the end of the round, I started playing better. And I said, yeah, that's fine. We can have a couple beers and
Science.
loosen up. And so I said, all right, yeah. So maybe tomorrow morning we change things up a little bit. And I know Tom loves Bloody Marys. So I said, yeah, I'll bring some Bloody Mary mix and, we'll do that and see what happens. So we start out with Bloody Marys. We get on the tee box. Neither one of us have there's no nerves. We're just going out to play golf. And we did talk to the pro, Brian, and we said, I asked him, I said, what do you think that the winning score would be today? And he point blank said, I think anybody that comes in at 15 under will do this. They'll win it. So Tom and I agreed that right off the bat, we're not going to, like we did the first day, we're not going to look at the scoreboard. We're not going to ask for updates.
Just play golf.
The 2 guys we're playing with, we said we don't want to know where we are. It doesn't matter whether we're playing bad or whether we're playing good. We don't want to know. And I'll tell you a quick story after that about looking at the scoreboard. But anyways, so we go out and we start playing, and we're actually hitting the ball very well. We're scoring pretty decently, and I think we both knew we were scoring pretty decent. And so we kept it up, and
And more importantly, we were having fun.
we were having fun. And so I'll say, before I go further, we went to the second hole, and I said to Tom, I go, all right, we have to do this. We just have to do this. I said, I brought some Fireball.
Oh, my word.
Let's just do a shot of Fireball and see where things go. And so we do. We take a little nip, and both of us take a shot, and then we were off to the races. We struck the ball well. What we did is we played really well as a team because neither one of us, we didn't make any mistakes together on the same hole, which is usually in a member will kill you.
Yeah.
If you both score badly on a certain hole, you're going to lose stroke, and that didn't happen. Tom had some holes where he had 2 strokes. And at one point, I thought we had lost a stroke, but then Tom reminded me that he had 2 strokes in that hole, and I think that was hole 13.
Yeah, and then 15, I 5-putted.
Yeah, Tom.
Oh, no.
And I looked at Tim and said, "Can you tell me to pick my ball up yet?"
Yeah, I think Tom looked at the whole group and said, "Is it okay if I pick my ball up?" I looked at him. I said, "Finish it up." Now, so I'm looking now at about a 12-foot putt for par, and I don't stroke on the hole. And one of the things I did say to Tom on that hole was, I said, "This putt's downhill is going to be very fast." I said, "So, think about that." And I think
I took the
whatever I
driver
told
out.
him, and I think he took the driver out of his bag because that ball went about 20 yards off the green. So he did. He ended up, I think he chipped back up, he putted, and he ended up, after about 5 putts, we decided, okay, you're done. So now I'm looking at this 12-foot putt, and I just closed my eyes, hit the ball, and I just hear the plunk into the cup. So we didn't lose a stroke there.
No.
Wow.
So I go, you know what? Something good's happening. And so we go to the 16th hole, which is par 3.
Oh, no. Did you get a hole in one?
Nope. I wish, because that would have paid off even more. That would have been great. But when you're playing well, the people that are in the clubhouse will get in golf carts, and they'll come out, and they'll see what people are doing. So they see the leaderboard inside the clubhouse or in the dining room. And so people would come out to the 16th hole, and they'll sit up on the 8th, where the 8th hole is. If you're up on the hill, you can just look down on the 16th green. And so as we pass them, they don't say anything other than keep up the good work. And so right then and there, I'm like, all right, we're doing well. So we still didn't want to look. So we get to the 17th hole. I think we both made par.
Yep.
Oh, no. Yeah, whatever. We kept the score the same.
Yep.
So we knew we were 15 under going into 18. Both of us hit drives, really good drives. Tom actually outdrove me, which
First time for everything.
No, that wasn't the first time, but he hit a really good shot. And so the folks,
Felt really
the
good.
2 guys we were playing with, I had hit my second shot, and I happened to go into the sand trap to the right side of the green. So one of the guys that we were playing with said to me, he says, "Hey, go coach Tom." He goes, "You want to know where you guys are at?" And I said, "Well, I guess at this point it doesn't really matter." And he goes, "You have a 2-stroke lead over everybody, and there's only one team that can catch you." And I think Tom heard something. Wasn't sure if he actually.
I heard Tim say, "Well, I'm not telling him that."
So then how did that impact you mentally?
Well, so Tim comes up to me and says, "Tom, center of the green, you're getting a stroke here. Center of the green, 2-putt par." And I remember I looked at Tim and said, "I try to par every hole, right?" That's the objective. But sure enough,
he
overshot
proceeded to hit the shot over the green, probably by about,
3 yards.
3 yards. And so we walk up, and we're looking at my shot in the sand trap. And I'm like, this isn't really good. It's one of those, it's on the hill. I'm going to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Ooh. So we walk back and see his ball. He's sitting up nicely in the rough. And I said, just flopping in the air. And he hit a really great shot. I mean, it came down onto the green, probably went 6 feet by the hole. So now it's my turn to hit a shot. So I'm thinking, worst case scenario, we're going to still be 15 under par because Tom's not going to 3-putt this. He's going to 2-putt, and he's got a stroke. So I go over to my ball, and I'm looking, and I actually cleared the green from the guys that were standing on the other side. I say, "Hey, watch out. I have no idea where this is going." So I got my leg up on, my right foot's out, my left foot's in, and by the grace of God, I came through that ball. I hit it out of the sand trap. It rolls down to literally, 2 inches from the pin of going in for the par. And all we hear is just banging on the window on the inside of the clubhouse, and you can hear the yelling and screaming. And so I tap in for the par, and so Tom still had a birdie opportunity, par opportunity, but for a net birdie.
We'll just say I net parred it.
Yeah, he net parred. So that ended that. So now we just had to wait. We went in, people were congratulating us, and we're like, it's not over. And Tom's like, "What do you want for a drink?" And I said, "Let's just have a beer because we may have to have a playoff." And,
I think they handed me an IPA because that's usually what I drink after a round. And Tim goes, "No, you're not drinking that. That's too much. We might have a playoff." And I was like, "Sorry, Sadie, I need just a Miller Lite."
So we waited, and the one team that we thought could catch us on the 18th, on the 17th hole, they ended up getting another birdie. So we're at 15, they're in at 14. We watched them both hit good drives, and then we proceeded to watch them, unfortunately, and good fortune for us, that they both chunked their shots, their second shots. So we kind of felt pretty good. And so that was the end. After that, we just
Opened the bar up and
and it was
enjoyed
a
the
good
rest
day.
of our night.
And the funny thing is what the pro said, 15 under is exactly what Tom and I came in 15 under.
I had no idea I was with such distinguished company here. I mean, I knew I've golfed with both of you, and, both these guys are really great golfers, but champions?
Yeah, champions for the next,
Champions?
what is it, 210 days maybe?
Till September.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we like to aggravate people when we go to the bar on Friday nights. We'll, hey, champ. Hey, what's up, champ?
Champ.
Yeah,
And we just keep it going.
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
That is an awesome story. That is, having golfed with both of you, and hopefully will again this year, you guys both have phenomenal drives. But anyway, we're not the golf channel, so we
No.
don't want to.
So I want to change gears a little bit, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about the apple in your eye in your family. And I'm not talking about Cosmo. I'm not talking about Emma. I'm not talking about your kids. I'm talking about Lily,
My granddaughter.
your granddaughter. I hear you talk about her all the time, and I know you have a very soft spot. And Karen may have told me you have a very soft spot for her.
So I have two granddaughters. Braylon, who's going to be 5, and Lily, who's going to be 11. And Lily was born with a disability, she's Down syndrome. Sorry. No, she is the apple of my eye. Just a great kid, and I sit here and through the course of time, when you think about when I went to school, when I was in elementary school, I remember there was a school next to me, and it was called the Mount Hope School. And what they would, this is where they would put the kids that had Down syndrome. They all went to the school. And it's so great today to see that they put these kids now in classrooms with, everybody else. They're not segregated there. And Lillian just thrives being around other kids. And her mother has done a phenomenal job with her. Doesn't treat her, any different than you would treat a normal kid. And she is just an amazing little girl who's very high function, very intelligent. And so when people say, you see things all the time, and sometimes people, will say, I'm sorry. And you always say, there's nothing to be sorry about. This little girl is a gift, just like my other granddaughter. My other granddaughter, was born deaf. And these kids have gone through things that, other kids don't go through. So it's great to see her thriving the way she is. Very, like I said, she'll be at our house coming up in April because my daughter's going away on vacation, so we're going to have her for a couple nights. And she's just the best little girl, the both of them. They're just so awesome grandkids. But she's had some challenges, and, there was challenges when before she was born. My daughter and I would have these conversations, and I remember my daughter saying to me, Dad, all the things that they're telling me, this could be really bad for Lillian. And she said, but she goes, I don't want to do anything other than give birth to this little girl. And so I said, yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite stories, and just tells you how intelligent she is that Karen has told me that whenever you call her, she goes, ugh, Grampy.
Yeah.
And smacks her.
Oh, yeah, and she'll smack her head, and she'll sit there, and yeah. And so the other morning, she called me. It's like 8:30. Like she's up early, and she'll call at any time in the morning. So she calls, and I answer the phone, and I was actually just getting ready to bring the dog outside, and I said, okay, Lillian, I'll call you right back because Grampy's going to take the dog out. And I watched her face on FaceTime, and she looks at her mother and says, Grampy's going to call me back. And so I'm like, really?
Another woman is doing that to you, right?
So I hung up with her, and sure enough, I call her back. And she's funny because when she's on FaceTime, she just puts the phone up enough so you can just see her eyes and her forehead. And she's just, but yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, she's awesome.
All right. So one other thing I wanted to talk about is, which is something I didn't know, but your love of Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah. Love Andrea Bocelli.
Yeah.
Love it.
Where did that start?
I don't know. I can't remember where it actually started, but whenever I was cooking a meal at home, I would, I heard him on the radio one time. I'm like, man, I love this stuff, right? So I would listen to it, downloaded his albums. So whenever I'm cooking at home and if I'm not going to disturb Karen, I'll put that on my Wingman or my Bose speaker. I've really taken a liking to, listen to him sing. And so I'll tell you a funny story real quick, because I asked Karen if she wanted to go see Andrea Bocelli, because he used to come around to TD Garden around Christmas time.
Yeah.
So she would listen to him with me, this and that. But most of the time I was listening to him with my headphones on if I'm in the other room. So she says, yeah, I'll go with you. And so when we get together, she'll say things to these people like, yeah, I'm going to go see Andrea Bocelli, with Tim, and I'll make sure that I bring, tissue so that I can wipe his eyes when he starts crying and everything like that. So I buy the tickets, and we go down with a good friend of ours, Corey Fox, and we meet at the North End for dinner, and then we go to the concert. And so we get great seats in the loge, and there's a family that probably brought their father there. And as Andrea Bocelli was singing, this guy would stand up and he would belt out the songs. Whatever Andrea Bocelli was singing, this guy was right there just singing it. And I could see my wife. She wasn't looking at me. And I think the song that it was time to say goodbye with Christina Aguilera.
Oh, that's
and
beautiful.
so she's looking down at the stage, and she wouldn't look at me. And all of a sudden, I see the tears streaming down her face. And I reached in my pocket, and I go, here, let me give you a tissue. Let me give you a tissue. Who's crying now?
Yeah.
And she's like, leave me alone. Leave me alone. And so, yeah, it was probably one of the best shows I've ever been to. And I'm not afraid to say that. I love the guy. I think his music is great. And it's funny, a real quick story. I was with a friend of mine, Johnny McAllister. And we met for lunch down in Nashua, and this was probably a couple months after we went to the concert. And so we're sitting at the bar, and there's another couple sitting over next to us, and I started telling Johnny that I took Karen down. I told him the whole story about Andrea Bocelli. And I'm going on and on about Andrea Bocelli, and this gentleman says, excuse me. And I said, yeah. He goes, I hate to interrupt you guys. I said, no problem. He says, but I have to apologize. And I go, apologize for what? And he said, I'm sitting here talking to my wife. He says, I'm listening to your conversation. He says, I'm thinking, this big, Brutus-looking guy does not listen to Andrea Bocelli. There's no way this guy listens to Andrea Bocelli. And then he goes, yeah, but everything you were saying made sense. And yeah, he goes, now I truly believe that you listen to Andrea Bocelli. And so I'm like, you don't have to apologize. I says, because my wife will always tell me, like, when I'm out, she says I have this stern brow. And she says, I always look mean. So maybe this guy took it as I was angry or whatever, but I wasn't angry. It's just my...
You were elated.
Huh?
You were elated.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I've never thought of you as a brute kind of guy, but
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
very sweet. I like you.
Well, thank you. I like you, too.
So I'm just curious, like, 8-term state rep, and we don't talk about politics because it's anything but politics, but what was it that, 29 years in the fire service, what was it about public service? I mean, obviously public servant as a firefighter, but then what made you want to get involved in the legislature and state government?
So when I was on the fire department, I ended up I was on the executive board of the union. And I actually I was vice president of the union. I served on the executive board for 17 years. I was the vice president. I served as probably right now the longest tenure president of Local 789. And during my time as the union president, I got to travel around the state, meet a lot of people, but I knew a lot of people from Nashua. I had good relationships with a lot of people in Nashua. And I met a very good friend of mine, Jane Clemens, who was a state rep in Nashua. And she's like, we really need to get firefighters involved in running for the legislature. And I was just kind of like, I don't know if it's something that I can fit in my docket of things that I have to do. I was so busy as a union president. We had contract with negotiating, just so many things going on. Then my friend Brian Rhodes decided he was going to run. So he ran, I think, one term before I did. And so Jane would continue to talk to me all the time. And so we had conversations. Then I met Betty Lasky, all these people that when I was union president, we endorsed a lot of people, a lot of senators from Nashua, Dave Gottesman, Betty Lasky, Peg Gilmore. So I knew all these people. And so they just all kind of started saying the same thing. You really need to run. You really need to run. So I finally said, all right, I'll try it one term and see what happens. And so, lo and behold, that's what happened. I got in. And then, honestly, I think I was 3 terms in Nashua. And then I met Karen up here. We got married. I was moving up here. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to, And I moved up here in 2016. And lo and behold, they had an opening in Ward 7.
It's like the mob. Just when you think you're out, they drag you back in.
They called me up and they said, hey, do you want to run again? And I'm like, oh. So, but here I am.
There you are.
8 terms later.
And you served on numerous committees. I know. I think we first met when you were on transportation.
Yes.
And then now you've been on labor for a number of years. Were there other committees?
No,
and
I never served on any other committee. Just
is labor your favorite?
Labor is my favorite. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was Steve Shurtleff was the Speaker of the House at the time that I went on to labor, and he asked me because I was told that I was going to be asked to be a vice chair. And I thought maybe it was going to be the Transportation Committee because that's where I had been for all that time. And I had met up with him, and he said, yeah, no, we want you to be the vice chair of labor. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's going to change. But, yeah, so.
Well, you come with a breadth of experience. I mean, you were sweeping, floors in businesses starting at 11 years old, and then you were all the way up to union president or vice president. So
yeah,
you
know
certainly
the
have
French
a lot
Hill.
of experience that you can bring to it.
Any dirt on Tom that we should know about?
And just like that, it's time,
is it time
to
What were
say
you-
goodbye.
When's Tom's birthday party?
Yeah. What, were we calling him Pretty Praisal?
Pretty Praisal.
Pretty Praisal? Any other stories from golf that we should know about? Or
I go through a lot of balls.
well, you know what? Speaking of which, actually, well, I guess we can wait. We have a special gift for you before you go. But before we get there, I just want to ask about, future plans. Like, obviously, you're in the legislature, but, what's out there on the horizon for Tim Soucy?
I don't know. I mean, I'm involved in a lot of things. I'm still, I belong to a social club down in Nashua where I've served as a president down there for almost 12 years. Great social club. A lot of, we do a lot for charities, which is great. Actually, real quick story. It was established in 1916, called the Club National. Started out as a bunch of young kids, started playing hockey on Sandy Pond in Nashua. Some of these folks actually went on to play in the AHL back in the day. So it was a group of kids that were playing hockey. They buy this building. All of a sudden, they come up with this name, the Club National. And so from 1916 to now, it's still an established place. Wow. And it was established to help local charities. And so we've expanded that. I mean, we have monthly meetings, and we can give away anywhere between $2,000 to $15,000. But we do a lot for local charities in Nashua. And we also give away money to like St. Jude's. We give to all the high schools around Christmas time, Salvation Army, all that stuff. So I'm on the board there. I just actually got on the board at Concord Country Club. So I had a property in Nashua that I just sold recently back in November. So I don't have the headaches of having to go down and work on a property anymore. So the future's wide open. That's what
As long as it involves Thursday
golf.
nights
A lot of golf
at Concord Country Club
Exactly, with Tom
throughout the
Praisall.
summer.
Future's so bright, we got to wear shades. Well, as a thank you for being a special guest, one of our sponsors is a company called Majestic Balls, which is basically fun, playful, regal designs for sports enthusiasts. And this is our golf version. Hopefully, it's not going crazy with the green screen here, but would like you to wear this with pride.
Absolutely.
And apparently it shaves, like, guaranteed to shave at least 3 or 4 strokes off your golf game. So,
Wow.
Can I get a couple of those?
so no,
Thank you very much.
no, you're cut off.
Yeah. No, but
course.
thank you so much for joining us, Tim. I've known you for a long time. I consider you a good friend, and it was great to hear some stories that I didn't know about you, and also give everyone the opportunity to also hear, the background of your life.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. I mean, for all of the years of service that you've given, both in the fire department and the state legislature, and just for sharing, being an awesome dad and granddad, and that's a real pleasure to hear all of the kind of the stories behind the man.
That's right. And when we win the member again this year, we'll come back on and
next
tell
year,
that story.
And do you give autographs? Like,
I haven't, because I write like a doctor.
so maybe we'll have an autograph session when you
There we
win
go.
when you win the
Perfect.
club championship
Yeah.
next time.
That's great.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for
and
having me on. Yeah, appreciate it.
pleasure. And thank you for listening to our latest episode of
Anything but politics.
where we talk about anything but politics. So on behalf of Tom Praisall of Demers, Praisall, and Thomas, don't want to forget Thomas.
That's right.
And I'm Tiffany Eddy of Tiffany Eddy Media. Thank you so much for listening, and we've got so many more exciting guests coming up.